Hey, so listen, time's flying by here. I want to hit on a couple other topics. Certainly, you were with Tom Petty. I count 23, maybe 24 years. I don't know if you've got a specific number, but that's a long time.
I started recording Wildflowers in 1992. So I was a total of 25 years. Actually, now it's actually 29 years. In October, it'll be 29 years since I first walked into the studio and saw Tom Petty and Mike Campbell sitting there, and we started to record Wildflowers.
Now, as I understand the story, you weren't a heartbreaker at that time, but Tom called you in for Wildflowers. He wanted a few different musicians, and he called you in, and then you stuck around.
It was a solo project that he wanted. I mean, there was, when I got there the first day when we cut You Don't Know How It Feels, it was just me and Mike Campbell and Tom played bass. And then the next day there was another guy there playing bass, and then another guy playing bass, and then finally Howie showed up. And then a couple of days passed, and then Benmont showed up, and before you knew it, I was sitting there in the studio with the Heartbreakers, with all of them. And that was a fantastic experience. I hadn't felt that involved in an album. I mean, I'd done a lot of great albums as a sideman, but it just felt like a band. It felt like I was in there with the band in this battle to get this album that Tom wanted. That was at the time was really different. It wasn't anything like I'd heard. It wasn't what I would associate with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers sound. I mean, the first single was "You Don't Know How It Feels," and I didn't think that was a single at all. And it's a huge success,
huge hit.
Yeah,
and Wildflowers is still often considered his best work.
It's an incredible album.
Yeah,
it's an incredible album. There was a lot of work went into it. There was a lot of recording. I mean, the new album that's out, Wildflowers and all the rest. I mean, some of those songs that went on to "She's the One." They put some of that they put on the "She's the One" soundtrack, and then, but there was like so many different versions and different versions of songs. And if you listen to it, like some of the lyrics were taken from one song and moved into another. Once there was a bridge that actually became another song. He really did work hard at his craft. It wasn't just sit down 3 chords. And I think the funny thing that people don't really, I can't say people don't, some people don't recognize is that Tom Petty, he wasn't a singer, but he was extremely soulful.
Yeah,
I know a girl that wore out that that song, "Good to Be King." She had a vinyl version of it, and she kept dropping it back and listening to the way he said "to be there in velvet." She loved the way that he said velvet, and he just had a way of touching people and making people think that song might have been about them, or it really reminded them of something that was important in their lives. And, he did it to me once. I mean, we did the song. Looking for Daddy, and I talked to him about an experience that I'd had. I mean, I found out that I didn't have my father's name, and it was like a family secret. and here I am, like, I was something like 47 years old, and I suddenly find out that my dad's real name was Nicholson. I'm like, now my legs have gone to jelly because one of my foundation, and Dad wasn't around. He was around for about 2 days when I was a kid. Met him when I was 9. And I went to see. I was just dazed, going around Los Angeles, driving around Los Angeles, and I found myself out. Tom was staying. He was getting divorced, and he was staying in a house down near Pacific Palisades. And I found myself over there, and I called him up and said, "Can I come over?" He said, "Yeah, sure, come over." And this was after the Wildflowers tour, and I just went in and I said, I'm just really just like taken back by this stuff that's going on with my life, with my family, and I told him the story, and he just kind of sat there and he kind of looked at me, And he said, well, what was your dad's real name? And I said, Nicholson. He said, you know, Steve Nicholson on drums doesn't sound very good. Steve Ferrone on drums. That's you.
Yeah.
You made that.
Yeah.
And then years later, I'm talking maybe 2015.
Mm-hmm.
He calls me up and he says, can you come over to the house? I got a song. Do you want to play? Just me and you. And so I go over to his house and we go in his studio. And he put down a track with a guitar and he played bass and I played drums. And we sat in there and we put down this track called Looking for Daddy. Now, at first, I just sort of listened to the cadence. I didn't really listen to the lyrics, and I listened to the cadence of this thing.
Right.
And we put the track down. We did the track, and then sometime later it was finished and it came out, and they sent me a copy of it, and I put it on. I started to listen to it, and all of a sudden that lyric started to catch my ear, and I said, wait a minute, is that conversation that I had with him about my dad?
Yeah.
And I feel that whether it was or not, I don't know. Maybe he did write that, because he used to write, when he'd write stuff down. If you had a conversation with him and something stuck out in his mind, he had a book and he would write that line down in the book. And then if he needed a line for a song, he would find a line in that book.
He was certainly prolific. I mean, you look back, and I consider him really the soundtrack of all of our lives, right? He's been around writing.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
There. Yeah.
There must be a million people out there who related to You Don't Know How It Feels to Be Me. There's millions and millions of people that heard that song and said, that's right, that's me. He wrote that song about me.
Yeah.
And he used to, lots of songs. My sister got lucky, married a yuppie, took him for all he was worth. I mean, come on. It's like, how many guys out there have done it? But fortunately, I'm an only child. I never had a sister to sell off to some yuppie.
Yeah, you listen to his songs, and it does seem like every word had a purpose. I mean, he seems so thoughtful. And I would say, when you look at his songwriting, his chords, there's 3, 4, 5 chords, kind of like you said earlier, but they all seem to have a purpose. And
good chords.
Yeah. And everything he did, though, it sounded purposeful as well. Like he spent time thinking about, bridges and choruses and construction, and very thoughtful.
He was thoughtful. He was very smart. He was very, very smart man. Yeah. I love that man. I love that man dearly. He was a great, great man. People say to me, so. I run into fans and stuff, Petty Nation out there, and they say, so what was Tom like? And I say, you know what? He was everything that you thought he was. Everything. From sometimes being the arrogant rock star, every once in a while being really, I want my way and I'm going to get it, and other times just being that person who was so sympathetic to things and so felt things for people, had a heart. He was a fantastic man. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice.